fans, welcome back to another exciting hour of professional wrestling.
If pro wrestling was a sport, this would be its minor league. A training ground for those who seek the fame and fortune of the wrestling entertainment empire. Their idols are the biggest names in the game, including Chris Benoit.
Chris Benoit was one of my favorite wrestlers.
As a blow to the business. You know, this guy was a consummate performer.
Benoit and like Eddie Guerrero and like Rey Mysterio and guys like that, they were like, I guess like big inspirations to me.
Benoit's bizarre death in a murder-suicide is the kind of tragedy wrestling has grappled with far too often. Since 1985, more than 60 wrestlers have died before the age of 50, and that's only counting those who have made it big on national TV. Just last week, Shane Bauer, known to his fans as Biff Wellington and a former tag team partner of Benoit's, was found dead. He was only 42.
Most of these guys on TV look like cartoon characters, and most of them are the stars. So when guys see that, they say, well, I got to be like that to get to that level.
After pro wrestling star Eddie Guerrero died in 2005 of heart disease, which a coroner says was brought on by years of anabolic steroid use, the WWE instituted a wellness policy. But how well it's enforced could be another story. Unlike professional sports, pro wrestling is scripted, relying on characters instead of competition to determine its biggest stars, which means those either in or looking to be in the spotlight may not feel compelled to follow the rules.
Like, to be honest, I have contemplated myself about, using steroid drugs or enhancement drugs myself, just because in this type of business, the way you look has a lot to do with if you're gonna, get a contract or not. I think I'm just gonna, do it the natural way and just rely on my skills to get me there.
Perhaps this time they'll take heed of a lesson that's been taught time and time again through tragedy. It's been a tough story to follow all week. I can tell you that I live not far from the Benoit household, and not a day has gone by this week that someone has not stopped me and asked me, how does this happen and how do we stop it from happening again? Well, for more on this, we welcome in Dave Meltzer, who has followed pro wrestling since 1971. He is the editor of Wrestling Observer newsletter and the co-host of the radio show Wrestling Observer Live. Dave, thanks for joining us tonight.
Okay, you're very welcome.
I want to first get into the wrestling world. Is it as shocked and dismayed as everyone else at the staggering number of deaths among young people associated with pro wrestling?
Oh, yeah, I think that probably the wrestling world itself is probably more shocked and dismayed because they've been living this story on and off for a decade now. A lot of people just are suddenly realizing it. But yeah, and this one, I think, you got to remember that as horrible as this crime was, up until, Monday morning, Chris Benoit was one of the most loved guys in the business. And many of the guys who have passed away were very, very popular wrestlers who had a lot of fans. And, I think it's very hard for wrestling fans when you see, look at like old tapes of something from like 5-10 years ago, and such a staggering percentage of the people on this tape, are no longer with us.
Yeah, the wellness policy put in a couple of years ago hasn't had an impact. I know that so many times the damage has already been done with some people we see dying in their 40s or early 50s. Do you see an impact now with that wellness policy?
I think it's too soon to really give a definitive answer because it's only been in for since early 2006. And since that time, this is, as far as wrestlers under contract, this is the first death, and it was not a heart attack death or something like that you would attribute, similar to a lot of the deaths. This was just a staggering, crazy thing. So I can't really give an answer yet, but if we find out that there were a high percentage or a lot of different drugs or a high percentage of any drug in Chris's system at this point, when the toxicology reports come in, then we have to ask the question, how did this happen? How did this, slip through the cracks?
Yeah, okay, I've got about 10 seconds left. Very quickly, in 10 seconds, what's next for wrestling? How do we stop this from happening?
It's not an easy answer. I don't know. I really think that you need some sort of outside regulation, and I don't know that that's really going to happen. It's complex. You could probably ease up the schedule, test more vigilant, change the standards of what you want for wrestlers is actually probably a big deal. Like not so much emphasize the muscular bodies because then people aren't, they're not going to be so apt to want to have muscular bodies if it's not to their financial benefit.
Okay, I know it's a complex issue. We could talk for hours about it, but unfortunately we have to leave it there. Dave Meltzer with the Wrestling Observer newsletter and the radio show Wrestling Observer Live. Thanks again for your time.
Okay, you're very welcome.